listening not only here in America, but also the world, because we want the world to be listening. It is September 12th, 2022, and the new WCEG welcomes you. This program is Issues and Answers. It's our new season, and I am your host, Norman A. Carter Jr. On your computer or smartphone, you can view or hear us by typing in WCEG talkradio.com or then hit enter. And on the next screen, click the live stream tab and bingo, we'll be right there. Now, on your smart TV, just click the YouTube icon and search for WCEG Network. Click that and you'll be right with us. Now, some of you may wonder what WCEG stands for. It stands for Worldwide, that's where we're trying to influence, Community Empowerment Group. Now, what does that mean? It means our programming goal is to leave you more informed and more empowered than you were before you tuned in. Our motto, speak life into the community. Now, you may like us on Facebook, and hopefully many of you are viewing us live on Facebook right now. Or you can follow us on Twitter and on Instagram at WCEG _talk_radio and at WCEG Network. Now, especially today, the topics and opinions on Issues and Answers are those of moi, Norman A. Carter Jr., and not the WCEG Network. So please, please, please leave my boss alone. This is my show. These are my words, my opinions. And I guess I have to live with that. And you do too. But we want you to open your ears, open your minds, and get ready to learn. Please take notes and watch replays of this program on YouTube at any time, morning, day, or night. We're going to be right there archived on YouTube. And if you're watching on Facebook or listening, please send us your questions and comments. We love your input. We crave it. We crave it. So please do. Now, I must apologize. We had some guests scheduled for today, and for a multiplicity of reasons, they were not able to participate today. So they're kind of stuck with the kid here. And hopefully I won't bore you. Hopefully I will inspire you, and we'll get through this, and perhaps all of us will learn something. I can learn from you if you send in your questions and comments, and maybe, just maybe, you might learn a little bit from me. I'm hoping. Now, first, I'd like to begin with the passing of the Queen of United Kingdom. Queen Elizabeth II of the United Kingdom died last week. Today is 9/12/2022, as I said earlier, and it marks the beginning of several days of celebration of her life. Now, even though this country, America, prides itself on shedding blood to free itself from British rule, it maintains a love affair with the British crown. Totally illogical, as Spock would say. Some of you know who Spock is. What I found interesting was that the Queen of the United Kingdom is the titular head of the Anglican Church. I'm sure many of you didn't know that. Now, this is of little importance to those who refuse to investigate the history of our Pentecostal roots. But all of the political Protestant subdivisions owe their origins to the Anglican Church. The King James Bible, with its many translation errors and editing, is a product of the Anglican Church. Therefore, if you are of the many Protestant political subdivisions, you are indebted to King Henry VIII's quest for power and the desire to have his marriage annulled by the Pope, so that he could marry another. That's how the Protestant religion really got its feet under and start running. So were it not for him, Martin Luther, and several others, today's Christians, think about this, today's Christians would either be Catholic or pagans. Think about that. That's history. And we should get a little more into history that offends the liars and informs the seekers of truth. That's why we try to speak life to this community called the WCEG family. Yes, indeed. So let's talk about the Second Amendment, because that's sort of, I won't say it's the hot issue right now, but it's one of those issues that just will not go away. Let's get into that for a little bit. Now, when it comes to the Second Amendment, each of you need to ask your elected official or your candidate for elective office if they understand the Second Amendment to the Constitution of these United States of America. Most of them. Did you hear that? Most of them. Democratic, Republican, Libertarian, or whatever nonsensical political party they claim to represent can repeat it or understand it. When we are losing over 19,000 lives every day, this is despicable on their part and irresponsible on our part for not asking those questions. Let me give you a little bit of history. Your politicians will never, ever do this, okay? But you're getting it here on WCEG. The Second Amendment reads, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Let me read that again. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Ladies and gentlemen, as I always say, words are important. Now, the Second Amendment of the United States Constitution protects the right to keep and bear arms. It was ratified December 15th, 1791. How many years ago was that? Along with 9 other articles of the Bill of Rights. Now, the Supreme Court affirmed for the first time that this right belongs to individual for, listen to me, self-defense in the home, while also including that the right is not unlimited and does not preclude the existence of certain long-standing prohibitions, such as forbidding the possession of firearms by felons and the mentally ill, or restrictions on the carrying of dangerous and unusual weapons. Restrictions on the carrying of dangerous and unusual weapons. Hold on to that thought as I take you on a journey. Now, in case you didn't realize it, especially those people who proclaim themselves to be among the MAGA people, this is the 21st century. There is no need for any state to have a, quote, well-regulated militia, end quote. Every state has a National Guard. Now, what is the National Guard, for those of you who don't know? The National Guard is a state-based military force that becomes part of the reserve components of the United States Army and the United States Air Force when activated for federal missions. It is a military reserve force composed of National Guard military members or units of each state and the territories of Guam, the Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, and the District of Columbia, for a total of 54 separate organizations. You got that? It is officially created under Congress's Article 1, Section 8, the ability to raise and support armies. All members of the National Guard are also members of the organized militia of the United States as defined by 10 U.S.C. and 246, Section 246. National Guard units are under the dual control of the state governments and the federal governments. Hope I didn't fill you with too much information. I hope you were able to retain a lot of it and that you're taking notes, because we're going to move on and we're going to get a little deeper into this Second Amendment nonsense. Now, what are the duties of National Guard? Counter drug efforts, domestic emergencies, which can range from armed insurrection, how about that, to natural disasters, overseas combat missions, to repel an invasion of the United States, to enforce laws. Now, many of you are much too young, much younger than I, and you do not remember that Republican President Eisenhower used the National Guard to enforce a federal court decision requiring schools to integrate. Wasn't a Democrat, it was a Republican. But Republicans don't smile too soon, okay? But that's something that most of you young folks don't know. So all of the above duties were what was expected of that, quote, well-regulated militia. Therefore, America, gun activists, gun fetishists, MAGA-minded people, there is no need for a well-regulated militia. That amendment is what we call an anachronism, meaning it's meant for another era and not today. Unless you're really, 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 really stupid. And I'm going to show you how stupid you are if you're hanging on to this notice that we must have and enforce that Second Amendment as is. Now, this is your history lesson for those of you who flunked out of middle school. The need for a well-regulated militia was due to the fact that in 1791, the United States of America could not afford to outfit and supply its own army. Most soldiers who fought in the Revolutionary War used their own weapons and wore their own clothes. Today, we are no longer living under those conditions. Our military forces are well maintained and well armed. The only people using the militia, quotes, end quotes, excuse to support maintaining the Second Amendment are those of the same ilk as those who stormed the United States Capitol in order to overturn the results of a legitimate election. Recent revelations at the January 6th congressional hearings revealed that many of those insurrectionists were well armed. Some had military-grade AR-15 rifles, which they had to hide. MAGA people, I want you to listen. Open up your minds. When those armed people could not access a secured area due to the presence of the Secret Service and metal detectors, the President of the United States insisted, I don't effing care that they have weapons. They are not here to hurt me. Mr. President, also known as Donald Trump, say his name, whom were they there to hurt? Chief of Staff Mark Meadows, tell us, whom were they there to hurt? Presidential Attorney Rudy Giuliani, whom were they there to hurt? Let me repeat that quote from the President of the United States about armed people coming to the insurrection. I don't effing, and you know what effing means, care that they have weapons. They are not here to hurt me. Think about that. Listeners, all of these people were advocating the overthrow of the United States government. This is why all of them have the undying support of mindless citizens who are easily led by obvious lies and a quest for authoritarian rule. It has nothing to do with preservation of American values. That's a lie that they keep telling themselves and telling you. Now, what is the impetus for this abandonment of democracy and the embracing of authoritarian rule and fascism, not unlike that of Nazi Germany? Are you ready for this? Hold on to your chair. It's unadulterated racism. That is not hyperbole. Why do you think that during the insurrection of January 6, 2021, people were photographed running through the Capitol with the flag of the first insurrection, also known as the Confederate flag? Why do you think that many of those ex-insurrectionists were wearing shirts emblazoned with the slogan, "Arbeit macht frei"? That's German. And what does that mean? That is the same slogan over the gates of Auschwitz, Buchenwald, Dachau, and other World War II Nazi concentration camps purposed for the extermination of millions of Jews, Africans, and disloyal Germans. It translates to "work sets you free." It actually meant "come here to die." Those were the shirts worn on the shirt by the shirts of the people who stormed the Capitol on January 6th, supported by at least 144 congressmen, United States congressmen and women supported these people. Think about that. And I don't know how many senators, and definitely the former president. Now, for those of you who don't know, who don't pay attention to the census, the demographics of this country are rapidly changing. These insurrectionists know that more than the apathetic masses that not only do not pay attention to history, but ignore what is happening around them. Apathy. Hold on to that word. I will talk more about that apathy later. Now, what is important to understand is that the Second Amendment of the Constitution of the United States is irrelevant to the time in which we are living. Those who are holding on to it are driven by billions of dollars in profits and under-the-table payments to government officials. These are a deadly bunch of opportunists who, along with filling their pockets with money, are preparing to destroy our democracy. This is not hyperbole. In February 2021, here on the WCEG network, we were the first network to feature experts that explain to all of you the evil forces insinuating dogma into a willing and emasculated Republican Party. Now, let's be clear. I am not giving the Democratic Party a pass. When is the last time you heard a Democrat explain the Second Amendment? When is the last time you heard a Democrat explain to you that the Second Amendment is antiquated? When have you heard a Democrat leading the charge to amend or repeal the Second Amendment? The silence is deafening. Now, both parties treat the public as babes on milk. And just as many church leaders, they eschew feeding the public the wholesome food of truth. Both church leaders and seasoned politicians always say, they're not ready for whole food. Let's feed them milk and watch them smile. Wake up, America. Stop being played for suckers. Ignorance is death. Recently, I communicated with Mr. Ryan Busey. He is the author of Gunfight, My Battle Against the Industry That Radicalized America. He has indicated that he would like to participate as a guest host on a future installment of Issues and Answers on this WCEG network. I just saw him on CNN 2 weeks ago. And I look forward to his being here. Now, here are some facts from the United States Center for Disease Control, compiled in the year 2021, less than 1 year ago. There were 119 gun murders every day in America. Repeat that. There were 119 gun murders every day in America. In the year 2020, there were 19,384 gun murders. And Dr. Wanzo, I hope you're listening to this part. In the year 2020, there were 24,292 gun suicides. Now, we shall be discussing suicides on her on her Mind Matters program this Wednesday at 6 p.m. on this network. So please tune in. 24,292 gun suicides. Man. Now, remember I spoke about the ratification of the Second Amendment in 1791, and the reason it was enacted was to ensure states would have a, quote, well-regulated militia, end quote. Those, quote, militia, end quote, which are no longer relevant, were armed with muskets. 1791, the militia, those who fought earlier in the Revolutionary War, were armed with muskets. Now, today, thanks to slick marketing to younger people, the AR-15 style weapon is among the most popular weapons being purchased. Now, hold on to your hats. There are 2.8 million of these weapons in circulation. 2.8 million AR-15 style weapons in circulations. The AR-15 style weapon is a war weapon. It's what weapons, the Army equivalent to that is an M16. Just a difference in nomenclature, same gun. It's used in war. And it's out on our streets now. Think about that. Now, here are some facts that many of you are not aware of. But if you do some research, as I did, you'll find out the same information. An expert could fire a maximum of 3 rounds per minute with a musket. Repeat that for you. An expert back in the old revolutionary times and shortly thereafter, but certainly around 1791, could fire a maximum of 3 rounds per minute with a musket. That musket was accurate in the hands of an expert up to 55 yards. Next point. An expert can fire 45 rounds per minute with an AR-15 style weapon, which is accurate up to 600 yards. Properly handled, its bullet, hold on to your seat, folks. Properly handled, the bullet from an AR-15 can travel 2.2 miles. That's not me making this up. This is a fact. 2.2 miles. Imagine that. You ever hear about see these idiots shooting guns up in the air? Absolute idiots. I don't care whether it's a 38 or an AR-15, the bullet comes down somewhere. And we even had here a few years ago in the metropolitan Atlanta, it was over in, not Stone Mountain, but Lithonia. A young kid was killed on New Year's Day, sleeping in his bed by a bullet fired into the air from who knows where that went through the ceiling of the house and came down and killed this baby. Stupid people shooting guns in the air. But think about this. You can fire an AR-15 weapon and the bullet can travel 2.2 miles. That means it lands somewhere with somebody you can't see, somebody who never heard the bullet coming because it's too far away. Amazing. The AR-15 style weapon is an offensive, not a defensive weapon. Remember the Second Amendment talked about to protect you within your home? Only a nincompoop would fire an AR-15 inside of his home for protection. Only a nincompoop. Weapons expert Ryan Busey, who wrote the book that I talked about earlier, he describes the AR-15 as an effective killing machine. An effective killing machine. This is what makes it popular among young people. And that's why you hear it with these mass killings. What do they use? AR-15 style weapon, where they can kill 15, 20, 30, 40, 50 people in an instant. Basically, 45 rounds a minute. How many people can you kill? Remember Uvalde? Bunch of innocent kids going to school. Amazing. Amazing. So it makes it popular among young people, especially those who desire or fantasize about either mass murders or a military style takeover of the government. Those are the only people who want these guns, people. Think about it. You're not using them to hunt. You're not using them for home protection. You're using them as an offensive weapon. That's the only reason to have them, to kill people, likely innocent people. Because, you know, these cowards never shoot at people with guns. They only shoot at people who are defenseless, little kids, people in a supermarket shopping for food, people walking through a park or going to a concert. Those are the people that they enjoy. That's why they buy these guns. That's why the AR-15 is possible. It's popular. There's no other reason. Absolutely no other reason. Now, let me explain this, or let me make this a little bit clearer to you. Do you remember the riot in Kenosha, Wisconsin, in August 2020? I'm sure Dr. Wanzo does. She's a Wisconsin native. In response to peaceful or somewhat peaceful, Black Lives Matter protests over the shooting of Jacob Blake by police officers, armed vigilantes swarmed the city of Kenosha. Many were armed with AR-15 style weapons. Now, who stands out among them? 17-year-old Kyle Rittenhouse. Don't forget this guy. 17-year-old Kyle Rittenhouse. He did not live in the community, and he was armed with an AR-15 rifle he was too young to purchase. He killed 2 men and shot off the arm of another. Now, some of you have no idea the damage an AR-15 can do. Because I was in the Army and I really wasn't trained on, but the M16 came out while I was in the Army to be used in Vietnam. I am well aware of the damage that it does. One AR-15 bullet can shear off the arm from a body. That's one bullet. Think about that. That's what these idiots want to promote, and that they're selling to young people. And that is why more people are getting killed in schools, in shopping malls, at concerts, because they're arming themselves with this effective killing machine. Now, this is not a defensive weapon. I'll say this again. It makes it an effective killing machine. It's an offensive weapon. Now, a jury of the community of Kenosha acquitted Kyle Rittenhouse. The National Rifle Association honored Kyle Rittenhouse. He became their advertisement for more purchases of this killing machine by young people. Tucker Carlson of Fox News dubbed this killer an American hero and celebrated his use of this effective killing machine during what had been a relatively peaceful protest. Now, why does this matter? In most states, you can purchase an AR-15 at 18 years of age, but you cannot buy a beer until you are 21 years of age. Let me just remind everyone that you are listening to the WCEG network, where we speak life into the community. My name is Norman A. Carter Jr., and these are my opinions, not my boss, just mine. So we got that, right? The AR-15 can be purchased at 18 years of age, but you can't buy a beer until you're 21. As Spock would say, that's illogical. Here's another word I'm going to throw out to you. Fratricide. Fratricide. Now, this is the part of the program where most African Americans either turn off the station or cover their ears, because African Americans hate this. Now, literally, fratricide is defined as a person who kills their brother or sister, or the accidental killing of one's own forces in war. Now, I have talked about this for years, especially on my Issues and Answers broadcast and in my church. Guess what? Even churches don't want to talk about this. They'd rather talk about cops killing blacks than blacks killing blacks. Sick. And you'll see why. Here are some facts. From 2010 through 2021, African Americans comprise 13% of the United States population. Let me repeat that. From 2010 through 2021, African Americans comprised 13% of the US population. But during that time, year after year, according to the FBI's Uniform Crime Reports, African Americans are victims of 44 to 47% of all homicides. Get that? 13% of the population, but victims in 44 to 47% of all homicides. 90% of those killed are killed by other African Americans. Think about that. 90% of 13% of the US population are responsible for killing 44 to 47% of all homicides. Now, African American apologists always state, white people kill white people and black people kill black people. What's the problem? Okay, idiots. The problem is you failed math. It is horrendous when you comprise only 13% of the population, but you are responsible from 44 to 47% of all homicides year after year. No other race does that. If you cannot figure that out, you are excusing needless death of your own kinsmen. If you cannot figure that out, you are excusing death of your own kinsmen. Then you not only need your head examined, you need to shut your face until you can go back to middle school or junior high school and learn math. That leads to my next point, apathy. Now, I'm going to quote from an open letter. I'm going to take it, anything on Facebook is open by someone I know. It was an open letter to mayoral candidates in Philadelphia by lawyer and activist Leon Williams. And here is what he said, and I found this to be profound. Whenever you find apathy, crime will not be far behind. The best friend of crime is apathy. Crime likes darkness. It relishes the don't snitch culture. Trashy communities, non-communication between neighbors, and non-vigilance over neighborhoods. That's from Leon Williams. Yes, police have a responsibility. Yes, government leaders have responsibility. But most importantly, communities themselves have responsibility. I even said that in my book, which most of you won't read because it's written by a Black man. That's the truth. I'm letting it go with that. Now, I was brought up in one of the poorest sections of Philadelphia. If a stranger was seen walking into my block, the 2200 block of Harlan Street, which no longer exists, neighbors would watch that person until he or she either passed through the block or met a neighbor in that block. That's what we used to do in the poorest section of North Philadelphia. Doesn't happen now. Doesn't happen here in Georgia, and I don't think in any neighborhood that I know. But let's get back to guns for a minute. A guy named Stu on Facebook, who describes himself as a staunch conservative, full of conservative wisdom, he'll tell you that, basically said, guns kill people. Guns don't kill people, rather. People kill people. Therefore, our focus should be on the people and not the guns. Now, I would like to use the following example for people such as him who live in an alternate reality. The United States and its allies work extremely hard at keeping nuclear weapons away from rogue countries who are led by factions focused on destroying other countries for no other reason than they exist. This is a perfect example of restricting access to weapons of mass destruction by parties that lack the sense of moral responsibility, a sense of moral responsibility, or who act irrationally. For the purpose of their existence, nuclear weapons are not a necessity. For the purpose of their existence, nuclear weapons are not a necessity. Okay, for the purpose of their existence, AR-15s are not a necessity for civilians. For the purpose of their existence, AR-15 and AR-15-like weapons are not a necessity for civilians. Now, these countries have defensive weapons. What they do not need are overpowering offensive weapons. Such is the same case with AR-15 type weapons or handguns altered to hold extended magazines. These are not weapons for defense. These are not weapons for hunting unless you are hunting humans. These are offensive weapons, and as described in the Second Amendment, remember I read that to you, they are, as described in the Second Amendment, dangerous and unusual weapons. Dangerous and unusual weapons, and should not be in the hands of civilians. Now, okay, all you Second Amendment fanatics who might be listening, talk about that. You won't, because all of you, every last one of you, are mental cowards, only capable of mouthing antiquated and banal rhetoric that only appeals to your MAGA coterie of anachronist. You're out of touch with reality. And that's my conversation about gun violence. And please feel free or now any other future program to text in to WCEG your comments or your questions about guns. Now, 'tis the season when more lies are told than in a whorehouse next to an army base. It's election season. Skinning and grinning, hugging and kissing, and what's lacking or missing are truth, integrity, and commitment. As the Temptations once sang, vote for me and I'll set you free. Rap on, brother, rap on. America, stop being a sucker. I said that before. Stop selling yourself short. Giving blind allegiance to any political party. Giving blind allegiance to any political party will do nothing but lead you down a dark path to mediocrity. If you are a Democrat and say something as stupid as, Democrats have always been for the poor man and minorities, you have forgotten that during the 19th century and most of the 20th century, Democrats were predominantly segregationist. It was a Republican president, as I told you before, Dwight D. Eisenhower, who sent the Army National Guard to schools in the South to enforce integration. Democrats protested that. Now, Republicans, you don't get off the hook. While you boast of being the party of Lincoln, in the last 2 years, you have gutted the Voting Rights Act of 1965, abrogated a woman's right to make her own health choices, and blocked Medicaid benefits to millions of Americans just because of your irrational hatred of a former president, a former African-American president, Barack Obama. Now, you Republicans are led by people who believe that they will not approve any election unless it goes their way. Let me repeat that because I kind of stumbled over that. Now, you Republicans are led by people who believe that they will not approve of any election unless it goes their way. That's not hyperbole, that's fact. That is what's done in China, Russia, Venezuela, Nigeria, and other backward-thinking repressive governments. That is the direction you want to take us, Republicans. And I'm not indicting all Republicans, but I'm indicting this faction of the Republican Party that is now taking control. So Americans need to stop looking at party and begin looking at character. I said this last year. I'm saying it again. Character matters. Okay, now here's where some of you are going to turn off the broadcast. Donald Trump. Some of you won't say his name. You call him number 45, but have the courage to call his name. Donald Trump was a racist, a liar, and a thief before he was elected president. He was as bad as the robber barons of the late 19th century. Read your American history, you know what I'm talking about. Becoming president did not change him, it emboldened him. He nearly succeeded in upending our democracy. Now, here in Georgia, I'm going to offend some people. Here in Georgia, we have to decide which wife abuser we want to put in the senator seat. It's not hyperbole. It's documented fact. Many of you will not like that characterization, but sometimes the truth hurts. Among the two, there is a better choice. You first have to search your conscience and decide if you are voting for party or person. Then you have to glean from them the character traits that make them the best candidate to serve you and your values for truth, justice, and the American way. I borrowed that from Superman, but it's appropriate. You cannot allow Sean Hannity or Don Lemon to be a substitute for your own brain and your own critical thinking. Just as important, it is essential that you register to vote and you vote. When you vote, I want you to think about 19,384 gun murders. Think about 24,292 gun suicides. Think about the lies about and the ignorance of the Second Amendment. Think about Ron Busey's description of that effective killing machine. Think about a woman's right to choose and make her own health decisions. Your decision, your vote, your fate. Now, I invite you to tune into WCEG Talk Radio on Wednesday. That's this Wednesday, 9/14/2022 at 6 p.m. That's to Dr. Cassandra Wanzo's Mind Matters. I think I'll be a guest on that program. Now, she will be discussing suicides. So I'm hoping that we're going to again mention this 24,292 gun suicides. I'm sure that number will impress her and will really support a lot of things that we'll be talking about. And I also invite you to mark your calendars for Monday, September 26, 2022 at 4 p.m. here on Issues and Answers. My guests will be retired prison warden Jose Morales and others. This will be part of our continuing series of programs about prison conditions and prison reforms. Until then, I thank you for being part of our audience. Do me a favor, spread the word. Let us know what topics you would like to discuss by becoming a friend of WCEG on Facebook or Twitter. We're right there. We're listening. We're available. And maybe we'll even have you come in and be a guest host on the program. You don't know. We'd love to have you. So everybody can have a voice. Remember, your influence counts. Use it. I thank you for joining us here on WCEG today. And remember, early voting in Georgia begins on October 17th. That's not that far away for the midterm elections. And that's for, among other things, the senatorial elections that I mentioned earlier. Think about it. Pay attention. Vote. Have a good day. See you soon. Bye-bye. Ooh.